Good Tuesday afternoon, guys. Jerry Miller on the I Love CVille Show. We're live in Charlottesville, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille Network. So much to cover on an Election Tuesday edition of today's program. We'll talk voting results in the city of Charlottesville, the turnout, the engagement at pitiful lows. We'll just put in perspective how pitiful the engagement and the turnout for this election is, at least as of 9 a.m. The next update from an engagement and turnout standpoint happens in 25 minutes. So during the show, we'll see if we can get you the 1 o'clock poll results live on air. Folks, the Virginia governor's race is an absolute dogfight. Glenn Youngkin has turned this into a melee of memorable proportions. Terry McAuliffe and Glenn Youngkin toe-to-toe, a battle of significance. And I'm going to put into perspective not only this governor's race and how it impacts the Commonwealth, but the governor's race and how it could impact, the federal government, our country. I mean, there's a reason you have guys like Joe Biden, Barack Obama campaigning for Terry McAuliffe. There's a reason you have guys like Donald Trump campaigning for Glenn Youngkin, because this race means a lot, and we'll let you know how much it means here in a matter of minutes. Brennan Armstrong, the gunslinger, the redhead, the southpaw, the quarterback for Virginia football, this gentleman's got some broken ribs. An injury of this magnitude, you're on the disabled list, you're off the active roster for 3 to 8 weeks, and that's a large delta. 3 weeks versus 8 weeks. I mean, 8 weeks, you're missing the season. 3 weeks, you're coming back for the end of the year, maybe that clash against Virginia Tech and potentially the bowl game. So we'll see how Virginia can keep the team going. Bronco Mendenhall can keep this club, this program going in the right direction without its best player, a player who is a Heisman Trophy candidate. We all watched the game against BYU, and if you have not watched the game against BYU, you missed a shootout that was absolutely enjoyable until the fourth quarter when BYU pulled away. As Brennan Armstrong was coming off the football field after throwing a pick, he literally pointed to his ribs. He was caught on national television, mouthing to the coaching staff, "It's broken, it's broken, it's broken." He's talking about his ribs. Virginia is 6-3 overall. More importantly, the Wahoos are 4-2 in the Coastal Division. And if they win out the remaining contests, this football team could win the Coastal and play for an ACC championship. They have Notre Dame, they have Pittsburgh, they have Virginia Tech. Again, you win out, you beat Pittsburgh, you beat Virginia Tech. You're playing in an ACC championship because the Pitt Panthers lost to Miami, and then UVA, if they beat Pitt a couple of games from now, would have the head-to-head edge. We'll talk about that today on the I Love CVille Show. Alex Urpí is going to join us, the CEO of Emergent Financial Services. So much to cover with CEO Urpí, including, I will ask him specifically, the McAuliffe-Youngkin governor's race. Which outcome is best for the Virginia economy? Which outcome is best for the Commonwealth growing financially and from an economic standpoint and from a job standpoint? The unemployment rate in Charlottesville is below 4%. It's damn good. It's better than Virginia's unemployment rate. It's ahead of the national average unemployment rate. But I'd like to see this economy continue to grow as we try to recover the losses we gave away due to this pandemic last year. So much to cover. We'll tell you about the Boar's Head Resort and a Winter Wonder event that's going to transpire next month. A Winter Wonder event that is literally the lighting of the grounds at the Boar's Head Resort. You got an Instagram-worthy, very easy hike around the rolling terrain in Ivy. We call Boar's Head. Lights everywhere. Nearly 1/2 mile around the lake in Boar's Head and behind the hotel. Everything is lit up at night. And from November 26th to January 30th, it is the place to be for holiday festivities. You want to buy your tickets now. We'll tell you how right here on the I Love CVille Show. The lead of the program, my friends, has got to be this governor's race. And this governor's race could determine so much, not only for Virginia, but it could undoubtedly, as I was watching Squawk on the Street this morning, could signal a rough road ahead for Democrats heading into next year's midterms. Pollsters and politicians are looking at this Virginia governor's race, an off-year election, as the predictor of next year's midterms. The polls have shown a race that is 1% tight, and the margin of error for these polls is 4%. So when the candidates are less than 1% apart and the margin of error is 4%, you know this is a Michael Vick-like dogfight going on here for the race for Virginia governor. I'm going to read some copy and items from a story on CNBC today to try to put in perspective the importance of this race. Here we go. Virginia's high-stakes governor's race between Democrat Terry McAuliffe and Republican Glenn Youngkin is coming down to the wire as voters go to the polls today, ahora mismo. The tight election is expected to yield important clues beyond Virginia about the nation's political landscape going into 2022 midterms and beyond. Folks, the polls close tonight at 7 o'clock. We encourage you to get out and vote. Furthermore, pollsters and politicians are looking at this off-year election in Virginia as a predictor of next year's midterms when Democrats will try to maintain their thin majorities in the U.S. House of Representatives and U.S. Senate. Here's an important quote and paragraph for you folks. Get ready. Quote, "There have been 4 times when the party that's been on the outs has won the House from the incumbents, 4 times in the last 50 years. GOP pollster and strategist Frank Lutz told CNBC this morning, every one of those 4 times, 100% Virginia has predicted the outcome. That's why everybody is watching the Commonwealth so closely." Think about that. 50 years of data, that's quite a sample size. 4 times in the last 50 years, the party that's been on the outs has won the House from the incumbents. And all 4 times, Virginia, our Commonwealth, has predicted the outcome of what has happened. There's a reason you are seeing Joe Biden and Barack Obama go to bat for Terry McAuliffe. A reason you're seeing Donald Trump go to bat for Glenn Youngkin. A reason you're seeing Dave Matthews playing the Ting Pavilion. This race, a microcosm and a predictor of a national trend. And Glenn Youngkin, to his credit, over the last few months, has made this race something to talk about. He is within the slimmest of margins, according to pollsters, less than 1% away from Terry McAuliffe, a political machine and former Virginia governor. To say your vote matters is an absolute understatement. Studio camera for a couple of seconds, J-Dubs, as I stand up and roll my sleeves up. Studio camera, studio camera. McAuliffe, say what you want about McAuliffe. How Terry McAuliffe handled August 12, 2017 in Charlottesville was bad news bears and no bueno. McAuliffe lied. McAuliffe was not prepared. He called some piss-poor shots. And then he proceeded to write a book about it and do a book tour leveraging Charlottesville, Virginia to sell books to make some money. And those are freaking facts. Cannot argue with what I just said. Cannot argue with what I just said. Much of the August 12, 2017 blame falls on the boots, the loafers, in the shoes of Terry McAuliffe. Go back to the one shot, J-Dubs. Please, my friend. Judah Whitcower, our director. Thank you, Judah. Thank you. Now, let's talk Charlottesville, and let's try to use this local election as an indicator of what's happening. Look, it's no secret. We're in an off year. So what's an off year? There's no presidential election this year. And when there's not two people running for president on the ballot, engagement suffers, gets weak sauce, super weak sauce. When I'm running for Board of Supervisors in 2023, it's an off year. There's no presidential election. There's no governor's race. This year is simply an off year, no presidential election. And you look at the poll results, ay mi madre. Let's look at the poll results. 9 a.m. turnout, city of Charlottesville. At 9 a.m. this year, 2,039 people had voted. 2,039 at 9 a.m. in the city of Charlottesville. In 2017, at 9 a.m., 4,371 people had voted. You're looking at over 2x the voter turnout in 2017 versus 2021, 4 years ago. That is a ginormous delta. I'm going to give you more statistics to put in perspective how ginormous that delta is. In 2017, a total of 16,548 people voted. Good Lord. 16,548 total people voted in 2017 out of a total registered vote count of just under 29,000. So when I identify to you that in this year's election, that just barely over 2,000 people have voted, I want to really emphasize how poor the turnout is. Now, why is the turnout poor? I hate to say this. Rain impacts democracy in voter turnout, and it's raining outside. Facts. When the weather's bad, less people go to vote. Terrible to say that, but those are facts. What else is impacting voter turnout? Many of the schools in our community, including the school my son goes to, are doing parent-teacher work conferences or have kids off from school because of election day or some kind of teacher workshop. When kids are at home, one of the parents is often there with them, and that impacts voter turnout. Furthermore, this Zoom Town moniker that the city of Charlottesville has been branded with impacts voter turnout. People can work from an ISP in their basement and no longer have to get in their vehicle and drive to work. And before they get to work or as they're leaving work, they eat a donut while going to the polls. They're staying at home in their PJs and they're working on Excel, or they're doing an RFP, or they're balancing some kind of company checkbook, sending some emails, or grinding of some kind. Zoom towns, lower voter turnout. So to recap, why the turnout is so piss poor right now. A, it's an off year. There's no presidential election. B, I can't believe I'm saying this. It's raining outside. Good Lord. C, kids in many of the schools in our area are off from school for teacher workshops or parent-teacher conferences. As a result, one of the parents stays home with the bambino or the bambina and does not go in to vote. And finally, the Zoomtown moniker that Charlottesville has embraced and embodies is keeping people working from their tighty-whities, their BVDs, their Fruit of the Looms, their Lulus in their basement instead of driving to work where they eat a Krispy Kreme donut while waiting in the voter booth line. I'll follow the 1 o'clock numbers closely, but these numbers are no bueno, chico. So much to cover on this program. Ray Cadell says he was number 252 at 9 a.m. in Woodbrook. Thank you, Ray Cadell, for sharing that. Scott Aaronworth, hello. Thomas Taylor, hello, and welcome to the broadcast. TT, we love when you watch the program, TT. A couple more items I want to cover today on the show before we get to Alex Urpí, the CEO of Emergent Financial Services. Look, I didn't have a chance to talk about this yesterday because we did a fabulous interview with Rod Manella. Ron Manella of Boar's Head Resort, the tournament director. He's got a hell of a tennis tournament going on right now. I wanted to dot the I's and cross the T's from that UVA-BYU game. That was a shootout in essentially the OK Corral. I was expecting to see Val Kilmer and Kurt Russell and Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday brandishing six-shooters and shotguns and shooting up Curly Bill and his bandits. And instead, I watched two quarterbacks go toe-to-toe, crush the over-under at halftime, and play a football game that was as good as a game as I'd seen ever for 3.5 quarters. Then, injury hit. And it hit hard. And it hit our best player, and it's likely going to sideline our best player for a significant period of time. Brennan Armstrong, the ginger southpaw, hard-nosed gunslinger. He's walking off the field after throwing that second pick, and national television cameras capture him mouthing to the coaching staff, it's broken, pointing at his ribs. If you haven't seen it, YouTube it, look at the highlights. Catastrophic for a football team that undoubtedly goes as Brennan Armstrong goes. Now we are left wondering this question. A, how long is Brennan Armstrong out for? You read the Richmond Times-Dispatch today, an article from Mike Barber, who is covering the team in BYU. The prediction is 3 to 8 weeks for broken ribs. 3 to 8 weeks for broken ribs. If there's any silver lining, the Hoos are on bye week this weekend. Notre Dame on the 13th of November, a game that has some meaning because it's the Fighting Irish in their top 10, but I'm going to cut to the chase, especially with an injured quarterback. The two contests that matter the most are the last two ones of the season at Pittsburgh and hosting Virginia Tech. If in miraculous fashion, and it would truly be a miracle, if Brennan Armstrong is playing against Pittsburgh and he's 100% at Heinz Field. That game, the 20th of November, it would truly be a miracle if Brennan Armstrong is under center on the 20th of November in a road contest against the Pitt Panthers. If by chance he is, our opportunity to win and beat Pittsburgh, which is paramount to us winning the Coastal Division, our odds become much more improved. We got a gift, a blessing, when the Pitt Panthers, my friends, our listeners, our viewers, the people that follow this program, when the Pitt Panthers lost this past weekend, in shocking fashion, 38-34 at home to Miami, Virginia was handed a gift. Now the Wahoos could beat the Panthers, they could beat the Hokies in the Commonwealth Clash, and the University of Virginia is your Coastal Division champion playing for an ACC crown. They get the Panthers with the head-to-head matchup. 3 to 8 weeks for broken ribs. Bronco Mendenhall and this coaching staff have to get a freshman, Jay Woolfolk, 5'11", 200 pounds from Chesterfield, up to speed immediately. This dude played high school football in Richmond at Benedictine. He's a good athlete. He's got a good arm. But to compare him or to expect him to do what a Heisman Trophy candidate was doing is unfair to an 18 or 19-year-old kid. I would love to see Jay Woolfolk manage the game, and I would love to see this football team turn into more of a running club led perhaps by Keaton Thompson, the guy that every announcer and broadcaster loves to identify as a football player who's positionless. The position likely going to be a hybrid position with Woolfolk and Keaton Thompson sharing reps. I would expect behind an experienced offensive line, you're going to see the ball club running the pigskin a hell of a lot more. I hope, I yearn, I dream, I pray, I ask, and I beg that Brennan Armstrong can come back sooner than later. Broken ribs, especially for a quarterback who has to turn his torso to get zip on the ball, is an excruciatingly painful injury. You saw that with the pick he threw in the fourth quarter that pretty much determined the outcome of the ball game. 2 more items before we get to Alex Urpí in 60 seconds here on the program. There's a piece of real estate that's for sale right now. This piece of real estate, listed by the talented Johnny Pritzloff and Jenny Stoner of Tallheimer. Pritzloff and Stoner, the Batman and Robin of commercial real estate. Pritzloff and Stoner, who are some dynamic duos, Judah Wickower? Yeah, I just used that one. You can't use the one I just said. Dynamic duos, Alex Urpí. Let's put you on the spot right here.
Dynamic duos?
It could be from television as well.
Historical?
Rocky and Bullwinkle, Judah Wickower.
Oh, that's a good one.
How about
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid?
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid from Alex Urpí. How about the Wet Bandits or the Sticky Bandits from Home Alone? I don't know if they're a dynamic duo. Pritzloff and Stoner, the dynamic duo of commercial real estate, have the listing. It's 534 East Main Street, the Commonwealth Senior Living Building. It's right next to the Ting Pavilion. This piece of property is 8,658 square feet. It's 100% lease. The tenant recently signed a lease for a 5-year renewal. This is a piece of real estate that is bona fide in a trophy property waiting for someone to purchase. 19-20 year built, 100% leased. Stoner and Pritzloff on the challenge right there. We'll follow this one closely. Dude, if I had the ducats for this one, I would be all over it. I would be all over this piece of real estate next to the pavilion. Lastly, before we get to the Antonio Banderas of finance, the Winter Wonder Boar's Head Resort, November 26th to January 30th. Get your tickets now. They are lighting the grounds of the Boar's Head. You can walk an easy trail and have the most Instagram-worthy setting and landscape known to mankind around the holidays. You need a festivity for the holidays for your son, your daughter, your grandparents, your parents, your friends, your family. It's the Winter Wonder at Boar's Head. Judah, what's the URL?
Short one is bit.ly/HWLOVE.
See if you can get that on screen. And tell me if you can get that on screen on the lower third. I'll say it for those that are listening on Spotify, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. We have it posted on the I Love CVille Instagram as if you need to see it as well. www.bit.ly/BHLoveWW. Judah will get it on screen. Get the tickets now, dude. This event is going to sell out, and it's going to sell out quick. Judah Wickhower, you get that on screen. Before you do, let's go to the two-shot. Welcome Alex Urpí to the program. Alex Urpí, Brennan Armstrong, broken ribs. This gentleman, 3 to 8 weeks potentially out. Where do you want to start with that topic?
What a bummer.
Dude.
He was definitely the only reason he was under the radar and not in the Heisman conversation is because the team has had 2 losses, now 3. I mean, if we had not lost a couple of those early games to UNC, and we basically had the one bad offensive game against Wake, UNC was another shootout that we lost. I mean, he would have been 100%. I think he's still number 2, I think, in the country in passing yards, passing per game. So it's such a bummer because we were also in that game as well. I mean,
did you watch the game?
I watched. So I saw what the score was at halftime. Was stunned that we were actually up in that game after being down 21-0, but did not expect. Unfortunately, the defense is just so incredibly bad.
Yeah, Swiss cheese like.
That I really don't understand it because usually, I mean, Bronco Mendenhall was known for good defenses before he came to Charlottesville, and we've had good defenses since he's been in Charlottesville. So it's just kind of shocking that it would be. You feel it's kind of saddening because I feel like with a halfway decent defense, you take the defense of last year, 2 years ago, and put it on this team with this offense, and we're up there in the national conversation. I don't think we'd have a loss.
I agree with this man. Mike Barber at Richmond Times-Dispatch said this: "There's not a defense in the country that could stop Brennan Armstrong, except maybe his own defense." That really puts things in perspective right there.
Yeah. No,
meaning they can't stop.
BYU's defense was
pretty legit,
better than ours.
Yeah.
And
he
even
picked
then,
them apart.
He put 42 points, and that's with him not basically playing the entire fourth quarter.
Alex Urpí, CEO, Emergent Financial Services. I got to ask you about the governor's race, man. McAuliffe and Youngkin, I mean, the slimmest of margins. We have the country, pollsters and politicians and insiders and politicos across the country watching this race. First, open-ended. What do you make of the race?
It's interesting that it remains this close because I know in recent years, obviously, there's been a lot of talk that Virginia shifted from red to purple to blue. But the interesting thing about this race is it goes to show that there is still a lot of purple in Virginia. In other words, depending a lot on the candidates, the specific situations that may be happening in the state, you take out, I mean, I'm pretty sure this is a state, I think Biden was up 10 in this in this state.
Yeah.
This is a state that even if nationally Northern Virginia is pushing it blue, when it comes to statewide races, it's very much a purple state as we're seeing here. I mean, because this thing is it's statistically, I think in the Real Clear Politics average, it's statistically tied. So basically, if it's +1 or 2 either way, statistically tied means there's not enough confidence to be able to say that that's an accurate actual measure of the race to flip either direction.
So which candidate is best for the economy?
So it's interesting. I think it depends a lot on what you're looking at, what perspective you have. Because obviously, McAuliffe is running very heavily on employees. In other words, I think in his plans, he's got obviously paid sick leave that companies will have to do. He's trying to get to $15 an hour as the state minimum wage faster. So he wants to up that timetable. Obviously, those things are more expensive for small business owners. Obviously, if you were working for a small business, you'd probably love to have your paid sick leave paid for, assuming that you keep your job in that case. Youngkin is running more in terms of your pocket when you go. So he's looking to increase the size of standard deduction for the state, get rid of the grocery tax, and slow down on increase in property taxes. So he's trying to put a cap on the speed at which those can grow. So from that side of your pocketbook, obviously he has a couple advantages there. The interesting thing is that we've got a state that ranks, as we saw, number 1 in CNBC's poll of business. And McAuliffe my suspicion is McAuliffe is basically going to is running here. I think we probably can expect more of the same that we've had with Northam as governor. I can't imagine he's going to change things too much. Same party, same house, and so forth. Youngkin is looking at those two. He's been running on those 2 areas where in that poll where we did not fare well, which is cost of living and cost of doing business. So that's where he has put a lot of emphasis in his campaign in terms of how do we help the cost of living situation, how do we help the cost of doing business. So I think that's where it's going to be as is not unusual when you've got Republicans and Democrats running against each other, there's the small business questions, and then there's who impacts my pocketbook more, which is going to depend a lot on your personal situation.
Okay, so we got rain. We got an off election, no presidential. We got parent-teacher conferences and kids at home all over Albemarle County and Central Virginia and the city of Charlottesville. I identified the voter turnout results earlier in the race that are pretty pitiful right now. We got the Zoomtown moniker where people are working at home, so they're not driving by their polls to vote. Less engagement, historically, is better for the Republican Party.
Historically, that's been the case.
Because Republicans go out and vote on election day, no matter of circumstances that are in the environment like rain. They're just committed to going out to the polls much more so than Democrats. And that's historically the case. With all these factors, is your prediction a Youngkin win?
The one
Tough to say.
Typically, I would say yes. The one thing that's obviously has thrown somewhat a monkey wrench in everybody's predictions for the last 2 years is what do the mail-in voting numbers look like? Because that's what we're not privy to. We didn't have an idea based on party affiliation of people who say they have voted, but clearly that's not going to be a very big bellwether this year, because if you were going based purely on party identification, McAuliffe should be winning these polls by 10, because that's what happened last year. So obviously you've got some people who identify as Democrats maybe up in Northern Virginia who are either not voting or they're casting their vote in the opposite direction. So that's more difficult to gauge this year as far as what kind of advantage McAuliffe has in early voting and mail-in voting. But it's typically, if you notice, it's kind of funny. I always enjoy sometimes watching the Virginia results come in, because it's always
Northern Virginia just changes it at the end.
It's always a catch-up game. In other words, what we know what has really happened is, can the Republican on election day catch up to the mail-in votes that the Democrat has already locked in? And from our perspective watching, it's Northern Virginia comes in last. So can the Democrat catch up to the vote total of the Republican, who looks like he's winning throughout the course of the night, because of the fact that Southern Virginia comes in first?
That's exactly right.
So it's always the same story. So my suspicion is going to turn out exactly the same way. In other words, the early results are going to be completely meaningless, because Youngkin's going to look like he has some massive lead, and then it's going to be basically say what happens throughout the course of the rest of the night and how quickly does that gap close, and what happens in Northern Virginia.
This is a good call right there from CEO of Emergent Financial Services, Alex Urpí. Emergent Financial Services. Look them up online, Emergent Financial Services, and don't miss the closer, Xavier Urpí's Tuesday Tips, Top Tip Tuesday, with the closer, Xavier Urpí, that's on social media literally as we speak. All right, so I want to get to a couple items that are making moves, making waves. First, I'd like to bring up the creation. You know, they keep calling this a rebranding of Facebook. Really, a better description is a parent company was created, and this parent company is the umbrella company of brands that Facebook owns. It's now Meta, the company. And these brands are Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, WhatsApp. So the rebranding, while it was a creation of a new brand, it's much like what happened with Google, with Alphabet, the parent company. And under the family tree, you have Google Search, you have YouTube, you have Gmail. And now with Meta atop the parent, you have Facebook, you have Messenger, Instagram, WhatsApp, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Meta, an indication that they're very much focused on AI,
The metaverse,
VR, the metaverse, and this alternate reality. What did you make of this news?
Part of me, I'm going to be honest, and this is a little funny, it reminded me, there for many years there was a meme on the internet going around, and it's from Facebook, one of their conferences, where they unveiled one of their VR systems, and it's everybody wearing the goggles in this auditorium, seeing something, virtual reality, and Mark Zuckerberg walking down the aisle not wearing them. And of course you get a lot of Overlord memes, the Matrix stuff. And so my first thought was that. It's like, oh, gee, he's now going into the Matrix.
He's got even more power.
He's got even more power. He's going to rule the Matrix, basically. But it is interesting. He's going clearly all in on what, obviously Facebook/Meta now sees buying and selling things in a virtual reality to be a future profit. As someone who has never put on a virtual reality pair of goggles, and probably never will because I've seen The Matrix, and so that's it for me. It's hard for me to know how much profit there is to be made in that. They clearly believe it's plentiful, and you can think of now. Of course, you can imagine the kind of profits that would be there if indeed people do begin to have virtual lives that you put on $1 and you're doing something else. Because Mark Zuckerberg would own all the property in this virtual universe. Oh yeah, I'd love to live in that house that I see through these goggles that doesn't really exist. But if I put these on, I'd like that house. And Facebook's like, absolutely, for $1 million, you can have this virtual reality house. And so you can see where he would own everything, essentially, in the virtual reality that would be created.
It's terrifying.
It is kind of terrifying, to be honest with you. I have my doubts as to how many people actually want to participate in that. But we'll see. I mean, I have seen articles by writers who reviewed VR and admitted they got hooked on it.
I've seen the same.
They put it on thinking this is a dumb gimmick, and they couldn't stop for a long time. And so there may be something addictive about it in the same way that Facebook and Instagram have proven addictive. There's a certain dopamine that they know scientifically kicks in when people did their little ding that you were liked on Facebook, that can sort of hijack the brain and get you to go down these paths. So I guess that seems to be where they're going. This is definitely more of from a financial perspective. I agree with you, it's a creation of a new parent company. It seems a little more marketing than Google's, just as Google, when they did the Alphabet, they were also playing some games with the shares. Yeah. Class A shares, who controls voting rights in the company. He doesn't seem to be changing that up right now with Meta. But we'll see what they eventually decide to do. But it seems definitely a marketing push, to get away from Facebook.
They're rebranding it's a smoke and mirrors show to get the conversation off of Facebook into this new brand.
Exactly. It's Altria. Like if you ever see sponsors of major events, there's always Altria, which is all those little rainbow colored symbols and a little sweepy wave. And if you look up Altria is the tobacco companies. It's Philip Morris. It's all the old tobacco companies that knew no one wants Philip Morris Tobacco Company sponsoring your event.
Sure.
So we rebrand together as Altria, which sounds altruistic.
Yeah.
And do it from there. So it strikes me a lot as that. In other words, the Facebook brand has been heavily damaged in the past year plus. And he's saying, well, I don't really want people to think of me when I do these other things. So I need to make a company called Meta, which owns Facebook, but which over time people will not associate with any negative feelings they may now have towards Facebook.
Well said. Comcast rebranding as Xfinity, getting rid of the negative connotations and stigmas associated with down phone lines and cable and internet, and calling a center and you're not getting someone who can speak English, and then you become Xfinity and people think it's a new company. Very similar there.
Exactly.
The Redditors are up to it again. They've taken a second-rate, although some good earnings, a second-rate, probably a third-rate rental car company. I mean, I wouldn't even say, I'd say it's what? The most known was Enterprise, Hertz budget.
Avis used to be big. I remember a time
when they were top dog.
In 90s and early 2000s where anytime we rented a car, it was Avis.
Yeah, but now you would say Hertz, Enterprise, budget, right? Okay, so Avis surged today after the company reported stronger than expected third quarter earnings. Does that stronger than expected third quarter earnings justify a stock spike of 100% plus?
That's the crazy part. It was 9% over expectations, and the stock went up 185%.
Yes!
Now, what's happening, of course, is that the 9% earnings killed the short squeeze that the hedge funds had on. So, as always, and this is why you have to be careful of these things, because, as always, what happens is when you have a short going, meaning the hedge funds basically sold shares of Avis that they didn't have. Is what happened. They sold shares and said, don't worry, I'm going to sell this to you now, and then I'm going to go back and get it later when it's worth less. And of course, the price skyrockets. They have to now cover their you-know-whats, go to get Avis, and now they themselves are pushing the price of Avis up. So when there's not enough shares to go around, it goes up 100, 180. I think it's back down to only up 100% today. But this morning, it was at 185%.
They've stopped trading multiple times. Mm-hmm. I mean, multiple times because of the volatility. I mean, this is crazy here. I mean, I thought, and you're the pro, you're the expert. I thought the impact of collective, this is collective purchasing, collective buying, collective strategizing, right? Collective communicating.
Absolutely.
I mean, going on a Reddit board and saying, let's do this all at the same time together.
And I'm curious if this was pushed by Reddit before this even happened, if they knew.
You think, because you think they saw there were a ton of shorts that they went after it this way?
I'm not sure. It could be, or it could be it's just such a shock. I mean, granted, a 9% earnings.
It's good.
Above what you expected is a shock in financial markets. You usually, if someone beats earnings, they usually don't beat it by
a couple of points.
9%. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's a large shock. That it wouldn't be surprised me if this happened, even if there weren't Redditors involved. But it certainly looks like another opportunity where people went in and took the opposite side of a short and are temporarily winning. Now, granted, nobody wants to be left holding the bad. But I always say, you don't want to be the last guy holding Avis when this finishes.
Amen, brother.
Because that's what always happens when a short squeeze ends. Somebody's left holding the shares that then drop again. I
mean, I'm aggressive, and I like to trade, and I'm active. I don't touch the meme stocks. I don't touch the memes. I'm not knocking folks that touch the meme stocks. I'm not knocking you. You got more cojones than I do. It's just the unpredictable nature of these stocks scares the bejeebus out of me.
Oh, absolutely. I always tell people it should never, those little opportunistic things that you want to bet on, never make it, as a general rule, I say never make it more than 2% of your portfolio. The other 98% has to be core. Now, core can still be aggressive. You could be really aggressive with the other 98% of your portfolio. If you're my age, obviously I'm not going to put 98% of my portfolio in bonds yielding 2%. I'm going to be aggressive with it, but it's going to be on core, key, large sectors that I think are important, not betting on an Avis or a GameStop. That has to be a really, really small percentage of your portfolio. I always joke with people: take the money you would have spent at a casino and use that to be your to bet on the small meme stocks.
I want to talk. This guy's great. Alex Urpí, CEO, Emergent Financial Services, co-host of Today y Mañana. The show airs Thursdays at 10:15 a.m. on the I Love CVille Network. I cannot wait to hear what Alex and Xavier and the social media ninja Nick Urpí, who's in studio today, have in store for Today y Mañana this Thursday. I got so much I want to ask about Tesla. Tesla is a good position, strong position, top 7 position in my portfolio here. This company is freaking exploding. I mean, to the point where Elon Musk is doing so well. Did you see that the tweet he sent out yesterday of solving world hunger?
No, I did not.
So it was one of the World Hunger Organizations said if Elon Musk allocated 2% of his wealth, it's about $6 billion, that he could solve world hunger. And then Elon Musk responds to the tweet from the organization saying, you show me clearly how me allocating this much money will solve world hunger, and I'll sell these positions in Tesla right now and do it. And he it was like a checkmate to that tweet right there. Tesla is in fuego, chico. What is going on with Tesla? I know they beat earnings. I know they struck the deal with was it Hertz? With Hertz. So they got 100,000 units heading to Hertz from a rental car standpoint. That's tremendous awareness, and it's getting a taste of this EV in the hands of people on vacations, where it could then encourage them to make a purchase when they need a new vehicle. It's a great deal for Tesla. It's a great deal for Hertz. It's a great deal for both of them. It's a great deal. What is going on with this stock, my friend?
I think he's back to recovering a little bit of the mojo that he had last year. Because obviously Tesla took off last year. You could argue maybe it took off too much last year. And it came down big time. I'd be curious to know, is it top 7 in your portfolio because of its performance last year, or because you allocated top $7?
No, I did not allocate money initially to put it in the top 7 of my portfolio. I did so because, and I'm looking right now, NVIDIA's number 1. My return on, actually, my top return in the portfolio is Tesla at 164.57%. NVIDIA is 126.21%. Then AMD, I love the CEO of AMD, 79.27%. Microsoft in the 4th slot. ServiceNow, I love when he wears the sunglasses on TV, the CEO of ServiceNow. I would love to see Alex Urpí with some sunglasses on the I Love CVille Network. Apple, Carvana, ISC, Facebook, that's now Meta. I have a bunch of ETFs, MDY, IWB, Target, SPY, IVM, DIA, PayPal. Then I got some, some little, like as you guys said, I take about 5 or 7%, and then I try to do a little gambling over here. I do a little gambling on the bottom.
So that's an interesting perspective, because what that's telling me, if you got over 100 things there, you allocated probably, you didn't initially allocate top 7, but obviously it's done so well that it's become, and that's what
Tesla
happened.
was middle of the road,
exactly,
from an allocation standpoint.
Exactly, and I think that happened to a lot of people that last year. So basically, you allocate some money to Tesla, suddenly Tesla's up 200, 300% by the end of 2020. It's now a major part of your portfolio. So now you really have to think, what do I do with this? It's one thing to put Tesla in there when it's 2% of my portfolio. What if now suddenly Tesla's 10% of your portfolio? Your entire portfolio is swinging and moving on the basis of this one stock. And so it went down a lot. It retraced its steps, we should say, earlier this year. And now I think it's probably on a growth trend again, because he's having positive news again on the company. And let's be real, I think Tesla is going to rise and fall on the basis of belief in Elon Musk's ability to get things done.
Dude's a superhero.
That's basically what this comes down to.
What company CEO is most associated with a personal brand than Tesla? I mean, it was Steve Jobs, but rest in power. He's no longer.
Not there anymore.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was Zuckerberg when it was a good reputation.
Was Gates, but he's not there anymore as CEO. In fact, his rep is a little not so great right now.
It's not so great either anymore. So I mean, it's basically
Musk
that he took off last year. And I mean, I will even read some investors who are just waiting for SpaceX to go public, because that's the one they really want. They sit there and say, there are some investors that you can read articles from that say, yeah, Tesla's fine. It's SpaceX that I want a piece of, because their assumption is that Musk is going to be more heavily involved with SpaceX than with Tesla.
Don't you think so?
And I do think so. That's more his brainchild than Tesla is.
That's his legacy.
Is the vehicle by which he can fund SpaceX.
Well said.
He gets enormously wealthy from Tesla, and then can put more money into his missions to Mars and other things he's interested in.
One Tesla share is now valued at $1,165.63 as of 1:22 p.m. on Tuesday.
After a stock split.
After a stock split. Do they need to do another stock split? Do we stock split again?
It wouldn't surprise me if they did.
They have to.
Because I mean, at this point, they could, and it would probably rise again as more people then are able to afford being in Tesla to buy a share of it. It's a very interesting phenomenon that we're seeing, just this much rise in a stock this quickly. And I mean, obviously you do have to be a little concerned, because at some point earnings have to catch up to potential. The interesting thing is he's actually making money now. Yeah,
he's getting inventory out and units out there ahead of predicted.
Because last year, the one issue with 2020 Tesla was you looked at this, you said Tesla is doubling, tripling, quadrupling in price while having negative earnings.
Yeah.
This year, that's not the case anymore.
Right.
He now has enough earnings. He made his way into the S&P 500. He's not going anywhere from the S&P 500.
His market capitalization is all of the traditional automobile players combined, and he's bigger.
And so he's not going anywhere, because remember, the S&P 500 is market cap weighted. So he can't fall out of there unless his market capitalization plummets.
Which ain't
happening.
Not happening.
No. So he's going to be in there, which means the ETFs are buying him. The index funds that have to replicate the S&P 500 are buying him. I don't think he has I don't believe he has a dividend at this point. If he does, the dividend index funds are going to have to start buying him. So the interesting thing that happens is he's hit that critical mass, Tesla, where now you no longer have just interested people like yourself buying it because you're like, I think
the computers
this is good. You now have the computers,
the algorithms
that have no choice. You have managers that run funds who have no choice but to purchase.
I love this man. I love Alex Urpí. I love the Urpí family. I love the Urpí family. I love Emergent Financial Services. This man is a phenomenal broadcaster. My friend, I got Discover Financial Services, Capital One. I got Wells Fargo. Why are the financials struggling? Are we tied that to interest rates?
That's a difficult question. Financials tend to be tricky because they're not your fancy big name players that they can go up. They're an interesting sector because on the one hand, they're not what you'd call non-cyclical, meaning they're not exciting brands. Nobody sits there and says, I'm so thrilled to get into Wells Fargo.
Yeah, it's not sexy.
Exactly. But on the other hand, they're not defensive brands. When the economy goes south, financials go south because people worry about financial contagion. They worry about the banks. So they're a very interesting place to be. I think part of the issue is that with the Fed basically promising to end the endless money spree, they're going to taper.
Yeah.
At least that's the expectation. And furthermore, I don't know if you noticed today, there were a couple noticing that in the markets, many people who are in the market, so investors, big name investors, believe that the Fed is going to raise rates sooner than the Fed themselves have indicated. Now, Xavier and I can tell you we don't necessarily share that view, but if the market thinks that, if the market is operating on the assumption that A, the Fed is going to taper, B, the Fed is going to raise rates sooner than they have said themselves. So in other words, the Fed is deceiving themselves, and sometime next year they're going to wake up and say, you know what, let's raise rates earlier than we said we would. That's a shock to the markets, that's a shock to banks, because right now, let's face it, banks borrow from the Fed at essentially zero, and they can do a lot of things with that money. We know that they haven't necessarily been giving it out as loans to small businesses. They take that money, they can buy some stock.
They buy their stock.
They can go into the market at 3%. So in other words, they're able to very easily make that very incremental return on investment. Because the key thing with banks, you got to remember, is they don't make, let's talk sexy numbers. So they don't make big gains. What banks do is make very incremental marginal percents. They make 2 to 3% in portfolio-wise, as far as the whole portfolio, on large amounts of money. So if you and I sit here and say, I got $1,000, I invested at 3%, it's not very exciting. If you had $1 billion and you invested at 3%, that's thrilling, because that's $3 million every year.
I'd be buying the Commonwealth Senior Living Building.
You'd be fine making 3% if you had $1 billion. So banks are making margins on very small margins on very large amounts of money. You can restrict those margins, and the profits decrease tremendously. Because so for a bank, going from being able to make a spread of 3% to being able to make a spread of 2.5% is a big deal. That's a very large deal for them. So that could be part of the impact that we're seeing. Anything that curtails their ability to borrow at zero and reinvest into the market is going to hit their bottom line.
This man's got to close the deal at 2 o'clock.
Indeed.
He's closing the deal at 2 o'clock. You're closing the deal too. You're closing the deal.
The closer is closing.
And the closer's coming?
Close the deal.
So the closer's on the road listening to us right now in the vehicle. I love the closer.
Absolutely.
Okay, I want to pick your brain for 2 more minutes.
Absolutely.
2 more minutes. FinTech. I'm heavy in PayPal. PayPal has been struggling. PayPal's been struggling lately. The struggle seemed to start with the rumored purchase of Pinterest. And when the rumored purchase of Pinterest happened, Pinterest spiked and PayPal went the other way. Now you're looking at PayPal, which I still think is the top player in FinTech. PayPal, also the owner of Venmo. Mm-hmm. I think PayPal's a hell of a position, but why is this stock suffering?
That's not unusual.
Okay.
So the key thing to remember anytime, and this is a good lesson, that's actually a great lesson for any time a company you own is either going to be bought or buy another company. Typically what happens historically is when one company acquires another, in this case we've got the rumor of PayPal acquiring Pinterest, the company that's doing the buying will actually see their stock decrease, and the company being acquired typically sees a bump in their stock price. The reason is that obviously PayPal is going to have to pay to acquire Pinterest. And so now you have a lot of people looking at the stock saying, what's the return on investment of this purchase? And if you have investors saying, I'm not seeing the return on investment potential that I want to see
In the short term.
in the short term with
Yeah.
PayPal owning Pinterest, then this is a very large amount of money that's going to have to come out to go and pay the owners. So what PayPal is going to do if they go through with this, they're going to have to buy those shares of Pinterest from current shareholders, and it's going to be at a higher price than the current price. That's why Pinterest shares go up, PayPal shares go down. And you see this very often. So anytime you've got a company, I think we saw this some
AMD and
years ago.
Xilinx. You saw it with AMD and Xilinx.
We saw this years ago. You see this years ago when AT&T was making some purchases. The acquiring company goes down in price. The company being purchased goes up in price until you equalize where the sale price is going to be. In other words, what the buying company is going to pay per share. When you hit that, obviously it's not going to go any higher. No one would buy. I wouldn't buy Pinterest for $40 if I knew that PayPal's only going to pay me $35 for it when they buy that share, right? So there's a limit there, but always the company, very frequently, I don't want to say always because there's never say never, the company being bought goes up, the company doing the buying goes down. Things may equalize in the future. In other words, once the sale is done and people go in and start really analyzing, and the financial analysts take a look at it, they may come to a different conclusion and agree with you and say, you know what, PayPal remains the best positioned of the fintech companies, and the acquisition of Pinterest will enable it to do X, Y, Z. Right now, my suspicion is the number one thing in their minds is, what's this going to cost PayPal? And any R&D money, I should say, anything that they've saved, their CapEx that's going into Pinterest, is money that can't be put elsewhere. So they may be seeing, well, this means they might not do any stock buybacks. This means are they going to, if they don't currently have a dividend, are they going to start one? If they currently have one, are they going to increase it? Are there any other projects that we thought PayPal was going to do that they're not going to do because they're going to be using this CapEx to buy Pinterest? So there's always that kind of thought that initially goes through people's minds. Interest in the stock doing the acquisition declines, interest in the one being bought increases, and then I think things tend to equalize a little bit. They'll hit a different equilibrium once the purchase, if it happens, goes through.
Alex Urpí is the CEO of Emergent Financial Services. He's on fire today. I'm going to ask him about Today y Mañana, Thursday at 10:15 a.m. Before I do, I think my favorite CEO right now might be Lisa Su at AMD.
At AMD.
Lisa Su, the AMD CEO, who interestingly is the niece of NVIDIA CEO Jen Wang.
Interesting.
The NVIDIA CEO and co-founder, the uncle of Lisa Su, and NVIDIA and AMD are fierce competitors.
Fierce in your portfolio, to be sure.
No doubt, no doubt. Thursday at 10:15, my friend, what you got?
Thursday's going to be a blast. We're going to have on 3 guests that we've had on before, but we're going to have them on together. So we've got our Latino roundtable.
Ooh.
Because I don't know if you know this, but we've talked before how Latinos start businesses at about 3 times the rate of native-born Americans. Latinas, I think, are the number one group in the entire country in terms of starting small businesses. The number one. They even beat out Latinos. In other words, there's a higher rate among basically female Latinos than there is among the Latino population as a whole in terms of starting businesses. So we're going to have 3 awesome Latina entrepreneurs. We've got Chris Martin from Baker No Bakery. We're going to have Liz Marie Zambrana, so she came on also recently for Healing Moon Company. And we're going to have on Carolina Medina, who has just been, so she is at CIC, at Community Investment Collaborative. She just got promoted. She just became their Director of Lending and Operations.
Ooh.
So, and Carolina is a big player in terms of really knowing so much about what goes into starting a business from the perspective of Latinos. She's worked with Latino roundtables. She's obviously on CIC. She sees a lot of the people who go for loans, who are trying to really increase their capital to grow their businesses. So we're going to have 3 awesome perspectives on what it means. We'll talk a little bit about, how awesome it is to be a Latino entrepreneur, right? Talk a little bit about what that's like. What are some of the things that draw them to entrepreneurship? What are some of the things Carolina may be seeing in terms of, opportunities out there? And just have a roundtable conversation. So Judah's going to have his word. We chat with him. We're like, Judah, how many people? can we get on this table? And he's like, 5. So we're like, okay, 3 Latinos.
He said you guys have been doing a good job lately. I haven't heard anything but very positive things of late. And today, Manana, guys, is Thursdays at 10:15 a.m. Features this man, Alex Urpi. Features the closer, Xavier Urpi. Many of the guests, in fact, all the guests lined up by Nicholas Urpi.
He's our mastermind.
The social media ninja and the CMO of Emergent Financial Services. Michael, we come to as well. We'd love to see you, Michael Urpi. Thursdays at 10:15 a.m. On the I Love CVille Network, Emergent Financial Services. I will say it again. I will scream it. We tell our friends, Emergent Financial Services and the Urpi family. Class, character, honor, integrity, A-plus people.
Thank you. So we feel the same way.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It's always a blast.
It was a blast. It was an absolute blast. We went, you're going to make, you got 136.
I'm going to make it.
You're going to make it. We went a good 30, 40 minutes with him today. To close the show, the 1 o'clock turnout numbers are in, guys. They were just posted on Twitter by CVille Votes. So at 1 p.m. in 2021, 5,666 voters. 1 p.m. this year, 35 minutes ago, a total of 5,666 voters. So I'll give that number again. 1 p.m. this year, 5,666 registered voters. In 2017, 9,006. That's a hell of a delta. Oh my gosh. 1 p.m. this year, 5,666. 1 p.m. in 2017, 9,006. Later, gentlemen. Good to see you guys. Turn out. Vote. Get out and vote. Please. It's not raining that hard. Good Lord. 1 o'clock. I'll give the number again. 1 o'clock in 2017, 9,006 people voted. 5,666 have voted this year. Ay, mi madre, que pasa? Ay, mi madre. All right, that's the program. Did you get the URL on screen for Winter Wonder? Yeah. Look at the screen right now. Let's get it up. Yeah, let's get it up. Tell me when that's up there. Case sensitive when you're typing this URL in there. Give me the thumbs up, J-Dubs, when it's on there. Look at the screen. Look at the screen. Look at the screen. Look at the screen. The Winter Wonder at the Boar's Head Resort. A-plus time, www.bit.ly/capital letters BHLOVEWW. We'll post the link all over social media. Get the tickets now. It's going to be an event that's perfect for the family. Thank you for joining us on the I Love CVille Show. My name is Jerry Miller, and this, the best of Charlottesville and Central Virginia. Take care.